Hello and welcome to this video on Rune Johansson, reading number 16. I'll call up the text for you. Here we are. Yang kinchi dukkham sambhuti sabbam vinyana prachaya vinyanassa nirodhena natti dukkhassa sambhavo etamadinavanyatva dukkham vinyana prachaya vinyanupasama bhikkhu nichchato parinibbutoti. And again, yang kinchi dukkham sambhoti sabbam vinyana prachaya vinyanassa nirodhena natti dukkhassa sambhavo etamadinavanyatva dukkham vinyana prachaya vinyanupasama bhikkhu nichchato parinibbutoti. So the first line, yang kinchi dukkham sambhoti sabbam vinyana prachaya. Whatever suffering arises or is born, comes into being, sabbam vinyana prachaya. Sabbam, neuter singular, all, vinyana prachaya, from or through the condition, the prachaya of vijnana, it's all consciousness conditioned. Let me call up my iPad for you. Here we are. So, yang kinchi dukkham sambhoti. The yam here is the relative, which in the masculine would be yo, in the feminine would be ya, and in the neuter yam. So this could, for example, read this first sentence: yang dukkham sambhoti tan dukkham vijnana prachaya. So in English we would say the dukkha that arises, or the dukkha which arises, is conditioned upon consciousness. In other words, it has consciousness as a necessary condition. So in English we say the suffering that arises is so and so. In Pali and Sanskrit you say which suffering arises, that suffering is so and so. It's just a different way, slightly different way of expressing a relative clause. You'll see in the first sentence of this verse, in prose it would be normal to include a tam. Yang dukkham sambhoti sabbam tam vijnana prachaya. In poetry you can omit it. Now, that's the ordinary relative. If you put in a kinchi or a kochi, whoever would be yo kochi. That kochi is like an emphatic, like whichever, whatever, without exception. Just as in English, the dukkha that arises, or whatever dukkha arises, it's more of an emphatic way of saying without any exception. So yang kinchi, for example, whoever would be yo kochi. And the neuter, yang kinchi. So yang kinchi dukkham sambhoti, whatever dukkha arises, sabbam all, you could say sabbam tam, all of that, or just sabbam vijnana prachaya. Vijnana, consciousness, and word prachaya, meaning a condition in the sense of a necessary precondition. If B can't happen without A having happened first, then A is the pachaya, the necessary precondition. And as we know from the Sanskrit, pratyaya, this is some pratyaya. And I've explained this word in considerable detail elsewhere. The prati, to literally go against, or fall back on, rely on, have something as your necessary backing or the necessary precondition. That is a pachaya. And the absolutive form is in Pali paticca, in Sanskrit pratitya, as in paticca samupada. The samupada, the arising paticca, in reliance on, or having something else as a condition. Here the pachaya is in the ablative. In the adverbial ablative, the form is the same, just an ablative, but used as an adverb, from the condition, from vijnana condition. In other words, conditioned upon vijnana. Without vijnana, there can be no dukkha, is what's being said here. So vijnana is a pachaya, is a precondition of dukkha. What is being said is there can be no dukkha unless there is vijnana. Therefore, the vijnana is a pachaya, a precondition of dukkha. So it says dukkha arises conditioned upon vijnana, literally from the vijnana condition, from the vijnana precondition, vijnana pachaya. Sambhuti we know the root bhu, and the same in Sanskrit and Pali, bhavati, just to be, sambhavati, to come to be, to come into being, to be born, to arise. This bhavati, sometimes by lenition, becomes hoti in Pali. Lenition is a word you may not have come across. Very common in the Celtic languages. Lenition, sound is lenited. It's from the Latin word lenis, meaning soft, from which we get our English word lenient. It's just a softening of the sound, the lenition. So bhavati, hoti. There's a double lenition. The bh is lenited to a h, and the ava is lenited to o, so bhavati, hoti. In the verb sambhuti, there is a single lenition. You'll far more commonly see sambhavati, but that can be lenited in Pali, but not in Sanskrit, to sambhuti, and that's what we've got here. And the noun is sambhava, both in Sanskrit and Pali, just meaning birth. For example, Padma Sambhava, lotus birth, mean he whose birth was in a lotus, translated as lotus born, literally lotus birth, he whose birth was in a lotus. So, yankinchi dukkam sambhuti, and sambhavati means to be born in the sense of a living being being born, but also just means to arise, to come into being in a more general sense, which is how it's used in this line. Yankinchi dukkam sambhuti, whatever dukkha arises, sabbam vijnana pachaya, all is literally from the consciousness cause. Second line, vijnanassa nirodhena. Let me call back my text for you. There we are. Vijnanassa nirodhena. So vijnanassa, genitive, nirodhena, instrumental. Nirodha, cessation. So nirodhena, by the sensation, by the cessation, the ceasing to be, vijnanassa, of vijnana, of consciousness. Natti dukkhassa sambhavo. Natti, Nati, it could be written with an apostrophe there. It's na ati. In Sanskrit, na asti, and the a becomes na. So in Sanskrit, it would be nasti. Just is not. I mean, is not or there is not. So nati dukkassa sambhavo. There is no sambhavo, there is no birth, there is no arising dukkassa, of dukkha. Etam adinavam nyatva. The text up for you again. Etam adinavam nyatva. Having known, having become aware of this danger or understanding this peril, adinavam nyatva, dukkham vijnana paccaya. Regard this as being in quotes. Having regard this peril, what peril? Dukkha arises from vijnana, unquote, that peril. That's what it means here. So etam adinavam nyatva, namely dukkham vijnana paccaya, unquote, vijnanupasama, from the calming of vijnana, of consciousness, bhikkhu dichato parinibbutoti. Bhikkhu Bodhi translates by the stilling, yes, by the stilling of consciousness, a bhikkhu, hungerless, has attained nibbana. Now this word adinava, it can mean a distress or a peril, either the distress that you're in or the imminent danger of a distress. It has both senses. Interesting word. I got a note of it down here. Same word in Sanskrit and in Pali, adinava. I think in Sanskrit it's probably much more commonly found in the Buddhist texts. I think you could almost say it's kind of a Buddhist word. That means a distress or disadvantage, and in Pali a danger, especially a moral danger. It's from the, or seems to be, not absolutely certain, seems to be from the root di, which is a class 4 atmane pada verb, diyate, to decay or to perish. This is in classical Sanskrit. And it makes an adjective dina, depressed, afflicted, or sad. And then there's a compound word, compounded with a prefix, the adinava. The prefix a and the ending a becomes ava, adinava. This word, this prefix a here, the most common meaning of that prefix is motion towards, as in gacchati, agacchati, he comes. It's often used in the sense of in a hostile or aggressive sense, as in at. The atapa, aghata, gut hitting, aghata, aggression. Kroshati, he shouts. In Sanskrit, akroshati, Pali akosati, is to shout at somebody. In Sanskrit and in Pali, with the prefix prakroshati, for example, prakroshati and akroshati. Prakroshati just means to call out to someone. There's no aggressive sense. Whereas akroshati, you're shouting at somebody. In English, the same. You shout to somebody, oi, even in a friendly way. But if you're shouting at somebody, there's something hostile and aggressive. And this at, just as you're at me, he's constantly at me. So this at, and corresponding to the Latin ad and the prefix a here, is often used in as a prefix, a verbal prefix, to that same sense of the hostile at, being at someone. So adinava. So you've got this affliction or sadness, but coming at you, threatening you. That's the adinava, being a threat of this being affliction. And the very word affliction, ad fligere, to hit on somebody in Latin. Now this D, to die or to perish, it would be very tempting to think, actually it was cognate with our English word die. I'm not sure whether it would be scholastically totally correct to say that it is, but it's a helpful mnemonic anyway. Query whether there is any connection between them. So, etam adidamam nyatva, understanding, literally having known. Back to iPad again, here we are. So, as we know, we've got our root nya, to know, and it makes its absolutive regularly in Sanskrit, jnatva, and in Pali, as you would expect, this is regular phonetic mutation. The jna becomes a nya. The atva, a followed by a consonant cluster, so the a shortens. So nyatva. So there we are. Nyatva is the regular Pali form from Sanskrit jnatva. So having understood, having known this adinava, having known this danger, or understanding this danger, how does Bhikkhu word it? Bhikkhu word it, having understood this danger. Yeah. Sorry, I called up the wrong. Sorry, what am I doing here? Here we are. Understanding, literally having understood, nyatva, having understood this danger, namely, so I put in inverted commas here, dukkham vijnana paccaya, suffering is from vijnana cause. Suffering is conditioned by consciousness, is how we'd say it in English. Then upasama, this is again an ablative, from or by the stilling or calming of consciousness. Upasama. Upasama. It's from the root sham, meaning to be calm. It's where we get the shamatha in Sanskrit, samatha in Pali, as in shamatha / samatha, meditation. It just means calming. And the upasama is not, we talk about calming down. Sanskrit makes it look like calming up, but it's the upa in the sense of a completion. It's just the stilling of consciousness. It doesn't really add. Does the upa add anything of substance? Just the sama. Vijnana sama, vijnana upasama. No, it's just, it sounds better Pali to put the upa there. Literally the up stilling, the up calming of consciousness. The monk who is then not hungry, literally dehungered. Look here at the not very common root, psa in Sanskrit, meaning to eat, and then psata means actually not eaten but wanting to eat, hungered, hungry, psata, which that psa becomes a ch in Pali, so chata means hungry, and in Sanskrit nishpsata, dehungered, which then by regular phonetic mutation becomes nichata in Pali, just not hungry. Bhikkhu Bodhi translated as hungerless. Yeah. So a bhikkhu nichato hungerless parinibbutoti is has attained nibbana. Now you may well ask, how could nibbutta be the past participle of nibbana? Sanskrit nirva, you'd expect to see nirvata. In fact, it is possibly from nirvrita, just ceasing to be, ceasing to proceed. And there's an entry in it on Margaret Cohn that the etymologically Sanskrit nirvata and nirvrita, two entirely separate words in Sanskrit, have become kind of fused and melded effectively into one in Pali. I won't bother here to go through the complex history of how that happened, but we can just accept for a fact for the moment that nibbutta, despite its anomalous form, may, for practical purposes, be treated as the past participle of nirva, Pali nirvana, nibbana. So he is nirvanad, has achieved or is in a state of nibbana. And this pari, literally meaning around, we often see it in conjunction with nibbana, the parinibbana of the Buddha, I mean his final death. And here it has an intensive, a kind of a meaning of finality. That's finally parinibbana, parinirvana, rather than a nibbana while you're kind of alive. The Buddha's parinibbana. But here parinibbana appears to be used as somebody who's still alive. The monk is without hunger and may be treated as parinibbuto, as having achieved parinirvana. So there it is. Don't worry about the anomaly. We can deal with it. If I'm asked, I'll deal with it in more detail. That's it. Yeah. So I'll read this through once more. Let me just, okay. So did I can't remember whether I showed you these bits that I was writing on the screen. I hope I did. I keep forgetting to show you my iPad. I was using nati, na asti, nasti, jnatva, nyatva, and upasama from the Sanskrit root sham. There we are. I will go back to the text now. Yang kinchi dukkham sambhoti sabbam vinyana pachaya vinyanassa nirodhena natti dukkhassa sambhavo etamadinavanyatva dukkham vinyana pachaya vinyanupasama bhikkhu nichato parinibbutoti. Some of this punctuation that's on here is because I cut and pasted this from the digital Pali reader version. Sometimes there was initially a comma after bhikkhu, which I deleted. It's superfluous. So vinyanupasama bhikkhu nichato parinibbutoti. Don't pay too much attention to the punctuation here. Very well, that's it on this video, Johansson Reading 16.